Hello, how sweet is that sound? Welcome to season 2 of the NRLW weekly podcast, all thanks to Lite and Easy, fueling Australian sport. A massive thank you to Lite and Easy for supporting us and our women's game. My name is Marlee Silva, the sideline eye for the NRLW on 9, and joining me once again, the one and only Sky Blues assistant coach, Ruan Sims. Hey, we might get into some Origin talk a little bit later. I know it's a sore point, Rue, but we'll get there. On the show today, the season has launched and we get our top 2 with Rue. We find out what is fueling her this week in all of the NRLW news that's come in the off-season. We also answer some of your questions and, of course, preview this massive season ahead. But before we get into that, Rue, I think we need to paint a bit of a picture of what this studio looks like, a new studio for a new year, and particularly what's on your head.
Yes, well, it's the Olympics is just around the corner. So we have gone full Aussie spirit and we've got the green and gold streamers, we've got the bunting. You're wearing an Aussie shirt. I am wearing some fluffy troll hat in Aussie colours. I don't know how long it's going to stay on for because every time I move it slips. So, but yeah, we love our sport. We love women's sport. We love any sport. And we're going to get cracking on with some footy talk, but also paying real homage to our Olympic athletes that are arriving in France as we speak.
Absolutely. I mean, we're certainly in store to see some of our, particularly our golden girls in Paris. Oh, and there goes the hat straight away.
Already gone.
I think that, you know, we've got to lean into this because you guys have to get your sleep schedule in order. You've got
important.
NRLW, you know, live and free on 9 and 9 now that you'll be staying up for sometimes or during the day on your weekends. But you got to sleep. And you'll be able to slip in a couple of hours of sleep in between the Olympics coverage. So we've got you covered. You're going to be wall-to-wall sport for the next couple of weeks. And Rue, I also wanted people to know, if they don't know already, that we actually have a few Olympians, a few gold medal winning Olympians who play in the NRLW now.
We absolutely do. Some of the Sevens girls have come across and they're absolutely killing it in our game as well. So, yeah, it's very exciting that they're getting involved, and especially someone like Emma Tonegado, who actually started in rugby league, went over to the Olympics, won a gold medal, and has now come back and is absolutely killing it in the NRLW. And there's a lot of others coming through and potentially some more in the near future.
Yes. Well, and one that comes to mind for me is she's not representing Australia, but we love having her be a part of the NRLW. Tyler Nathan Wong.
She's fantastic.
Is over in Paris right now, about to play for New Zealand in the Rugby Sevens. She's announced that it will be her last Rugby Sevens tournament, and then she'll be back here. How lucky are we?
I know. How good.
Yes. Well, with that, Rue, it's time to hear about what's been fueling you this week with the top 2 with Rue.
Yeah, top 2 with Rue. What's fueling me? I love this. So every week I'm going to take a stab at a couple of topics that have popped up the week before or are really interesting, and then we can sort of do a little bit of a deep dive into them. So this week I'm going to chat Origin. Obviously, it broke records left, right and centre. Every single game broke a record from the previous game, which was amazing to see. We got over 1 million viewers. I think it was 1,070,000 about for game 3. Unfortunately, weather played a bit of havoc with the game itself. So Newcastle was a sellout. So we would have got 33,000 there, but there's still almost 27,000 turned up.
Wow.
In those torrid conditions to support both sides. And then obviously in Townsville, it was never going to break that record because it has a smaller capacity, but still they turned out in force, and it was absolutely fantastic to see so many people there tuning in and also physically being there and supporting the game. Obviously for us, for the Blues, the result didn't go our way. However, there were some really positive signs, especially from game 1. Game 2 was a torrid affair, and the boot of Lauren Brown proved the difference. And then game 3, Queensland just came out of the gates so hard, and we found it hard to sort of stymie that, you know, that momentum that they'd built. So that was a big one. That was that Origin series was absolutely incredible.
Yes, and despite your own heartbreak and the heartbreak of the Sky Blues, I think that it was the best case study for why we needed a 3-game series.
Well, I think last year was the best case study for why we needed 3, because to have 2 games and win the second and not actually get a result out of it, you know, it just showed. And then this year, as we've spoken about, the records that have been broken, you know, just the actual quality of the games was amazing. So, yeah, that's going to be really good. And now I think sort of the next little thing that we need to sort of start looking at is where that sits in the NRLW schedule, because I think Origin does deserve to have some NRLW played before it.
For sure.
And if you think back to Origin down in Canberra a couple of years ago, how good that game was because the girls had played the 2020 season at the start of that year, then played Origin, and then played the 21 season at the end.
For sure.
Or 22, whichever one it was.
Yeah, however we counted it.
So, I think that's really important, and I think that's going to be an exciting one. So that's my first little point.
Yes, and Origin gave us a great taste of what's to come in this season. But in the off-season, we also had some very exciting announcements.
Didn't we just? And I think we're putting our hands up now to head over to Vegas with the Jillaroos.
Two hands.
We're going to just plug ourselves right now. Jillaroos heading over to Vegas. How incredible.
Huge.
Like that, big news. Really, really big news. And I think that is a wonderful advertisement for the game. It's going to be the best in Australia versus the best in England over there. 4 games, back-to-back, wall-to-wall rugby league in Vegas is going to be absolutely amazing. And then just while I'm on, big news from the off-season, because I can't stick to 2 topics because there was just too much happening. 2 new teams.
Yes.
Well, not new. 1 new team, 1 re-entering. Very exciting to see the Warriors returning to the fold.
Sure.
I think that is so good for our game. We have so many incredible athletes from New Zealand over here, and then for them to be able to represent the Warriors and go home, I think that's really important. And then the Bulldogs, who are already making some big moves. They've already announced some signings for next year. So there's a lot to love about what's happened in this off-season.
I think what both of those announcements have in common is more opportunities for more women's football. And that's what we're calling for, isn't it? That we want to see the games getting so good, and we want to see the girls at all levels. And I'm so excited about those particular announcements as well. I think especially knowing the Bulldogs' great junior pathway that they've built over a couple of years, we're in for a massive 2025.
Yeah, it's going to be huge, and I can't wait. The more footy, the better. That's what I say.
Absolutely. Well, let's not get to 2025. We've got to stay with 2024.
Yeah, let's focus on the now, shall we? Focus on the now.
Well, we know that the NRLW Weekly podcast is the podcast for both the players and the fans. So we've always got your questions in mind. Each week, please submit what you want to know, because Ru is a genius, right? I know, I can say this. After last year, I learnt so much from sitting across from you in this studio, and I know there's so much knowledge there. So please submit your questions, and we will get to as many of them each week as possible. And that's a perfect segue into the first question we have from listeners this week. Now, some keen-eyed viewers who watch State of Origin, or maybe who are just getting into their women's rugby league, have noticed there's a few rules differences with this the game at the moment. So could you explain to us what are the differences with women's rugby league and the rules in particular?
Yeah, so there are a few tweaks that have been made to the women's game. And obviously the biggest one that people notice is it's a 70-minute game. It's not 80. International is 80, but NRLW and Origin is 70 minutes for the open women. There are 10 teams, as we know, going to 12 next year, which is very exciting. We have 10 interchange. So that's where it also differs from the boys who have 8 interchange. So we have 10. With our penalties, there is no 6 again. So there's no set restart unless it's obviously touched in flight or it's a knock-on by the opposition, and then the attacking team gets a restarted set. That's different to a penalty for an infringement at the ruck.
So
like
that's, for people who watch the men's game, the ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, when you hear the oven bell.
Yes, ding, 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 10 metres or whatever.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Infringement.
Yeah.
So we don't have that in the women's game. It's just a penalty.
Yeah.
We also have, the men have 40-20s and 20-40s. We have 40-30s and 20-50s. So if you kick the ball from inside your 40, so the red line is you see that just before halfway, and it lands outside, or it has to bounce in the field of play first and then trickle out outside or inside the 30, then you actually get the ball back. Mm-hmm. And then also, if you're under a lot of pressure and you've got someone who's got a great boot like Kira Dibb, and she can kick it from the 20 and it can bounce in the field of play and travel out past the 50-metre line, you will then also get the ball back from that. So they're probably the biggest differences.
Mm-hmm. Just on those rule differences, why do they exist?
Well, they were changed around, so they did a lot of research around it, especially around injury, and they found that towards the back end of those halves, when a lot of that fatigue kicked in, a significant jump in injuries were occurring. So that was the main reason that it was reduced through that period and reduced. It was actually shorter, and then it jumped up. So it was actually 60 minutes.
Yes.
Total. Then it's jumped up to 70, and I believe in the near future it'll jump back up to 80 again, and in line with the international standard. But then that also means that the girls are going to be in training longer, they're going to be in the professional program longer, so their bodies will be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's all been done with that in mind. And it also means that the product stays very strong throughout that period. So that's why those rule changes came in. At World Cup, they did have the 6 again for the women. And obviously the teams that probably play a bit more of that professional level, like Australia, New Zealand, England, were able to manage that a little bit better, but then other teams who probably don't play or don't have players who play at that high level as often did sort of tend to struggle. So, I'm sure that whatever rule tweaks come in, it's always made in concert with the players and the RLPA to make sure that the players are on board with it. So, we'll see what new ones pop up. But, they're just a few little differences between the men's and the women's game.
And they exist in order to make sure that the girls' game has enough time to sort of catch up, because it hasn't been professional for very long. Well, it's still semi-professional.
It's still semi-professional. So, like I said, I think in the near future we will see that change, and we will see it expand and become a longer sort of product. But at the moment, this is where it sits, and I think the players out there, those women, are absolutely slaying it, and they're just showing why we can start to make steps in that direction, in the very near future, because they're just ultimate professionals, and their product that they put out each week is incredible, and it only gets better. And I think everyone was really worried when we brought the 2 teams in last year that it was going to dilute the product too much. I think what it did was a lot of those junior players who were sort of on the fringes, or those fringe players, got opportunities and they took it with both hands and they ran with it, which is great. 2 more teams coming next year, the same thing is going to happen. It could sort of level out a little bit, but I just think it's going to go on the upward trajectory still, because clubs are then putting resources in place to ensure that these players are getting what they need to be at their best come game day. So the longer we do that, the better the product's going to be. Our junior pathways are incredibly important in this space too, because if we don't have that genuine pathway through, the product at the end of the day is not going to be as good. But because these players, a lot of these girls coming through now, and I spoke about this a little bit at the launch yesterday, a lot of these junior girls that are starting to filter into the NRLW haven't had to put a footy down. Yeah. They haven't. There's been opportunity from under 6s all the way through. And for some players who are still currently playing, that never existed. So they've just fought tooth and nail to get there. But these girls have never had to put a footy down. They've always had a footy in their hand. And I get so excited when I go to clinics or see junior girls, speak to junior girls, and they say to me, like I had a young girl the other day, she said, I'm going to play for the Bulldogs when I grow up. I'm going to play for the Bulldogs. Yeah. And I was like, that's so cute. Yeah. But I'm with the Sharks. But that's okay. No, she was fantastic. Yeah. But, it's that is inspiring, and that what these women are doing week in, week out inspires that generation coming through. And the club and the game are putting resources in place to ensure that those pathways are important. And I think they're seeing results for it. I think the women's game have had double-figure growth year on year for the last 6 or 7 years. That's incredible. It's the fastest growing area of our game. And, I agree with Andrew Abdo when I say I think we can be the premier women's football sport in Australia.
Absolutely.
Like we're pushing those boundaries, and I think it's exciting.
I think that sometimes when, people who are more generally women's sports fans look at our game or look at kind of any women's sporting league, they can get a bit frustrated because it looks like that change is slow. But I think in the NRLW, we are evolving in real time, and particularly in those participation rates, I think that you can't be what you can't see. And I remember myself at 10 years old who loved rugby league so much, but never for a second thought that, I certainly couldn't play it. But I could be a part of a women's rugby league world. And that's what you're right. It's so inspiring. And I think it is going to and is in real time making such a positive change for what young girls believe they can be, but also what young boys see women doing and
As
see
a
them
norm.
as strong.
It's part of the norm. Like
100%.
It's part of our current lexicon. It's part of our modern world. And I think that's important. And it's also important to note that when we do these clinics, there's a lot of young boys that are there too. And they're just as enamored with the NRLW players as they are with the NRL players. And they show them the same respect. And I think that's hugely important in the current landscape. That's very, very important to normalise that sort of interaction and behaviour.
For sure.
And, sport is a great leveler with all of that stuff.
Certainly.
And sport has such a huge impact and a huge footprint. And we can leverage that for really great causes and really great opportunities like this. And I think since, 2018, it was when it first kicked off. How far have we come since 2018? 2016, I signed with the Sharks, and NRLW was only a whisper of an idea. It was like, we're going to do it, but it wasn't going to kick off until 2020. And then all of a sudden, things are accelerated because it gets traction and people are interested and they're what's going on? What are we going to do? And what is this?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the momentum just kicks off and it just rolls and more people are getting on board. More and more people love it. I know that this weekend for the Sharks game in particular on Saturday, there's a lot of girls playing junior footy and they're saying, as soon as footy finishes, we're going to Shark Park and we're going to support the girls.
Awesome.
And I'm sure that juniors in every club would be doing the exact same thing.
We love that. So a listener has asked, with the pay that the NRLW players are currently getting, you spoke about that average going up, where does it sit in comparison to other female sports in Australia?
Yeah, so currently the minimum is 34 for an entry level player. And that will increase year on year up to 2027 when the CBA ends. So the women's NRLW signed a collective bargaining agreement. I think it was worth $6 million or something like that for the first time ever, which was really important because it just then carved out that money specifically for the women's game. And I believe also this year, the first time ever, the rights were sold to a 3-game Origin series, which obviously we picked up for Channel 9, which is hugely important, as we've spoken about as well. Now, at the moment, when it comes to where they sit on the scale of pay, it's really important to note that obviously our season runs for half a year. So time-wise, it's a little bit different to other sports. It's basically sort of that sort of 6-month period. We are about 7th on that pay scale in Australia. Obviously, cricket is huge. They have an incredible they have an absolutely incredible CBA in place and they have wonderful champions that continue to push that. And I think as female athletes, it's really important that we look at lessons learned from that and we can use what they've done really well to help further our sports as well. So I think that's a really great framework to look at or something to aspire to in that space. The WNBL has a minimum of 20 when they come in. The minimum for WBBL is about 70, just under 72. So that's quite good, but they are playing.
They're a full-time
gig. So when we think about a full-time gig, I believe that is probably going to happen in the next sort of 4 to 5 years. NRLW will be up there. Yeah. Definitely. Yep. It has to be. And there is, like we've spoken about, there is a new negotiation happening in or for 2028. Yes. So there will be an agreement around that. And that'll be really interesting, that space to look at. So that's above us. Obviously, Super Netball, there again, they're full-time.
Well, just about
close to full-time. They obviously have that really important period throughout their days where they have carved out a safe space that they can work, study, do extra things. Yes. And then obviously they have their commitments around that. AFLW sitting at around an entry of about 50. And then NRLW is just under that.
I think that what is often missed context when we do talk about the pay, and this is what I've heard from the players themselves, is the fact that it isn't full-time. And in order for them to be earning more, they need to be playing more, training more. And I think it was actually Millie Elliott who I've heard talk about what would be really nice is for their strength and conditioning coaches and their physios and their coaching staff to be full-time in order to bring the game up with it. And I quite like that as like, in terms of the financial discussions, that almost from some of the girls I've spoken to feels like it needs to be a pretty high priority.
I think it is important because the athletes can't go out there and do that without their strength and conditioning, without their medical, without coaching, without any of that. It's impossible for them to go out and be at their best without those people around them. So that is definitely something that I genuinely think needs to be addressed and make sure that we do that, because when we do move into this full-time space, those coaches and all of that staff are going to have to be full-time.
Yeah.
So we start putting that, for like we've spoken about, put that framework in place now, and it sets us in good stead for when it becomes an eventuality. And it's in the not too distant future.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what's so exciting is like as it changes and grows. And this is why we want people to get on board now. Like you want to be there and be like, yep, I was there from the beginning and now look at it. Like everyone wants those bragging rights. So we definitely want people to be a part of it. The final listener question that I've got for you today, Rue, is what does a typical training regime look like for an NRLW player?
Again, this will depend on clubs, like what they're at. Pre-season, you're usually looking at least 4 team sessions a week. A lot of it conditioning, getting yourself prepared physically and mentally for a grueling season, because it is grueling. It might only be, people might look and go, oh, it's only 11 or 12 weeks of football. But when you have to be at your best week in, week out, and it's not just the game that people see on TV, it's everything away from it.
Yeah.
Everything away from it, because everything else gets put on hold for that. You need to be in your best physical space. So a lot of the preseason is around that conditioning and around, team structure and things like that. And so that could be 4 to 5 sessions a week.
Wow.
Plus then outside of that, you need to do your recovery. You also then need to do your medical stuff. So you need to physio. You need to then look at making sure that your intake, so your food is really important as well. So the dietitian, nutritionist, all that sort of stuff, vital. Like I spoke about physio as well, and your recovery along with that physical preparedness for training. Plus then you're doing video, you're watching video, you're watching yourself, you're watching other players in your position, you're just working on your craft, you're doing little extras. So there might, when on the books you look at it and you think, okay, we've got 4 sessions a week, but everything else around it is really, really important too. And in those, those 4 sessions, obviously the staff dictate what happens there. But as an athlete, you're there early and you stay late because you're doing your extras, you're working on craft. If you need, like I was always there early and there late because I was old, so my knees, I needed a lot of work. I had to do a lot of stretching and I was like prehab before warm up and all that stuff. So, a lot of that sort of stuff is really important. And then in season, again, it just depends on what your club looks like. Some clubs run a 5-3-1, which is you'll work back from the game, and obviously one is usually captain's run the day before, and then 2 days prior to that is a training session, and then 2 days prior to that is usually your work session, like your big session. And then obviously your recovery is prior to that as well. So, there is a science to it. And yet some clubs run a 4-3-1. It just depends. So, but it is a genuinely big commitment from these players.
Well, I was going to say we talk about it being a part-time kind of thing at the moment, but that's only because it's half of the year that we have NRLW. It's a full-time commitment when the girls are ready.
Yeah, it sounds weird saying part-time, but it's not fully professional. It's semi-professional at the moment is the way I probably like to look at it. They're semi-professional because they still have to do their full work. They still have to do everything in the lead up, so the first half of the year. However, they still need to stay physically fit. So they still need to be doing training that is prescribed for them prior to turning up, because you can't just turn up to pre-season and after eating chicken or burgers all off season and turn up and expect to be in good nick and ready to go, and then also not expect to not break down. So that's really important. So they still have to stay on top of all of that. And obviously the New South Wales Premiership has changed this year. It's running concurrently with the NRLW, which I think is very smart because it now means that there are players who, when they're not playing NRLW, will drop down and play in that Harvey Norman women's competition. And obviously Queensland had their BMD Cup at the start of the year. So there was still some footy that players could go up to Queensland and play if they wanted. However, now I think this underpinning the NRLW is really important. So players were involved in that. If you're involved in Origin, you're doing a lot of work in the lead up to Origin. And so there was things happening, and a lot of girls went back and played touch. Some went and played sevens, some played Oz tag, some went and played other sports and things like that, and then came back into it. So it's a busy training schedule for the girls.
It doesn't really stop.
No.
That's the main point there, I think. And it is nice that we do, as you've described, the New South Wales premiership there is almost acting like a reserve grade for the NRLW, which is really great to
I think
see.
it's important, definitely.
You're listening to the NRLW Weekly Podcast with Marlee Silva and Ruan Sims, thanks to Lite and Easy, fueling Australian sport. We'll be right back after this.
At Lite and Easy, we know that champions are made through hard work and dedication. That's why we partner with some of Australia's top athletes and teams to help fuel their performance. With Lite and Easy's delicious, ready-to-eat meals, athletes can focus on what they do best. Our meals provide the right balance of nutrition to help keep them at the top of their game. From the fields to the courts and everywhere in between, Lite and Easy is fueling champions. Lite and Easy. Eat well and play hard.
Welcome back to the NRLW Weekly Podcast with me, Marlee Silva, and Ruan Sims sitting beside me, thanks to Lite and Easy, fueling Australian sport. Ru, it's time for us to get into looking ahead to the 2024 NRLW season, which is here finally. I'm so happy about it. And to start, we need some big predictions. It's time to open the vault and lock away our predictions. Can you tell us who are your ones to watch for this season?
It's hard to go past the Knights. Obviously, their roster is fantastic. New leadership there.
Yes.
Ben Jeffries has taken over as head coach. Ron Griffiths has moved on. And they're the ones to beat. And tomorrow night's game against the Roosters, Knights Roosters, to kick off 2024 season is epic. That's going to be such a good game. So I would say that the Knights deserve that leader of the pack status.
Yeah.
And they're definitely the ones that everyone is going to be chasing because they're going for a three-peat. So I think they're the ones that they're going to be chasing.
So hold on, we'll lock that in.
Yep.
Ruan Sims, leader of the pack, ones with the biggest target on their back, Newcastle Knights.
Well, the leaders of the pack deservedly, I would say Knights.
Yeah.
Yep. And individual player, I'm actually really excited to see Rosie Kelly.
Oh, yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing what she brings.
A little code convert.
Yes.
A Kiwi who's come across.
Yeah, I am. I'm really excited to see her as a rookie.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see how Anessa Biddle goes. She won Rookie of the Year last year.
Did.
So with a full season of NRLW under her belt and another pre-season, to see what she brings in that centre position. And then when the both of them potentially play against each other.
Oh, yeah.
Excitement plus.
So Rosie Kelly, you'll be able to watch play for the Parramatta Eels this year, and Anessa Biddle will be at the Sharks once again. So, we love all the young guns who've got a lot to show us there.
And there's so many young guns coming through. Casey Ray is going to be debuting for the Dragons. Lily Peacock is another one who's fantastic. Riley Jorgensen's returning from injury, so that pink headgear is going to be flying at people all year. So, I can't wait. Excited.
Do you have a bit of a dark horse for us to keep an eye on?
Team?
Yes.
Okay, dark horse team to keep an eye on. Well, I'm going to say the Sharks, of course. Keep an eye on the Sharks.
Yeah.
I think the teams who came in last year learned some really good lessons from coming into the competition. I think obviously I spend a bit of time with them, so I'm excited to sort of see how they go. But, keep an eye on the Sharkies.
Would you be willing to put on the record who you could see lifting up the premiership?
No. Can I potentially do that next week after we've seen some football? Is that all right? Could we do that next week?
Well, I think we're okay. We can make that as an exception. I might add my 2 cents in terms of a ones to watch. Okay. And this is
Who's
pure
your ones to watch?
Club. I think that I can't look past how well the Titans did in 2023. And we saw a few of their superstars in the Origin series,
Yeah,
Jamie
fantastic.
Chapman, Lauren Brown,
Politi.
Ivania Politi, Loz Brown, who kind of broke New South Wales' heart. Like, I just think that squad is so incredible, and I am like Murph's biggest fan. That's Karen Murphy, one of the absolute goats of women's rugby league. I think that, in a similar vein to talking about the Knights, the two teams we saw in the grand final last year, I think will be out to strike once again.
And I really liked the way that they did it through their defence.
Yes.
Last year, the Titans.
Yes.
I loved that about their game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then who's your individual to watch?
I don't know who. I don't know about individual, but you know what? My individual ties into my dark horse. So last week it was announced that Marlee Murphy is the new captain of the Parramatta Eels. I admittedly was at the Parramatta Eels season launch emceeing, and there's something about the changing culture. Change is as good as a holiday.
Steve Georgalis is the new coach. Yep. And
the way that those girls, it just felt different in terms of where they were at last year and the year before, and they didn't have some of their superstars to start the season. I think it put them on the back foot, and it just seems like there's a lot of excitement there. Mahalia, I think, is an incredibly experienced dual code athlete and someone that Steve Georgalis was talking about. When she speaks, the way that the girls listen to her and respect her is something really special. So I think I'm also just like a little bit biased. She's a proud Gamilaroi girl like me. And I think that she's just this she's phenomenal. So I'm keeping my eye on her and what she can do with that Parramatta side for sure.
Nice. I like it.
Cool. Are we locking the vault then?
Yeah.
Alrighty, to wrap up our first episode of the NRLW Weekly Podcast, for the first time in 2024, of course, we need to talk about the games we are going to see this week.
Can't wait.
Every NRLW game is live and free on 9 and 9 now. So, set your alarms, get ready. It all kicks off on Thursday night at 7:45 p.m. We will be in Newcastle at McDonald Jones Stadium. As you've already mentioned, a massive game this round. The Knights and the Roosters will kick it off.
This is going to be a good one. So Clash of the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
There's some big bodies out there. There's some big names and there's some big footy that's going to be played on Thursday night. And I think the last time these two teams played, the Knights got the wood on the Roosters.
Yeah.
Quite convincingly at McDonald Jones. So the Roosters are going to be going there for some revenge, and the Knights are going to be going there and just wanting to put a show on for their fans.
Absolutely.
And obviously new coach Ben Jeffries at the helm.
Correct.
It's really, it's a good opportunity to touch on, we're sending all of our real positive energy out to Corbin Baxter after unfortunately having a season-ending injury.
Terrible.
With the ACL, and congrats to Sammy Bremner, who's come back in.
I mean, that's a story I think we'll be talking about next week for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and then apparently she came back, I heard one of the girls say yesterday, she came back in and she won their Bronco, which is their fitness test. And so she didn't do a preseason with the girls, but she came in and she just smashed it, which doesn't surprise me because she's just a freak like that. She's such a fit player. So she adds a lot of value, but we're sending our best out to Corby as well. So for tomorrow night's game, obviously it's not 24 hours since kickoff yet, so the team list hasn't changed just yet. So Isabel Kelly moving to fullback. She's played some fullback there in that New South Wales Cup previously. So she'll move there. Jamie Frezard is in the halves, partnering Taryn Aiken. So Taryn will be a very dominant voice there. Her Origin series, when you give her a sniff or half an opportunity, she will just take it. And Frez is very quick on her feet as well. She's really hard to contain. So that is going to be really interesting. And then on the flip side for the Knights, their halves pairing had a lot of time together last year. I think they formed a really good partnership, Roche and Southwell. And I really liked what I started to see out of them, where Georgia was taking the line on a little bit, and then when Jessie was taking over the kicking, or Jessie was taking on the line and Georgia would take on some of that kicking opportunity, they work really well. They bounce off each other really, really well. And then you add Olivia Higgins in there, who, obviously made her Origin debut this year. She is an incredible football player. She's so smart. She's so, decisive around the ruck, and her defence is really solid. So I think their forward pack is really promising. And then listening to Nita Maynard speak yesterday at the launch, she said Taylor Predabon has had a great preseason and she's really growing into a leader of the pack up there. So you put her and Caitlin Johnson next to each other with Olivia Higgins in the middle of it. That's pretty incredible. So, yeah, it's going to be a huge game there. But I am actually tipping the Knights to come away with this one tomorrow night.
There you go. For
But
game one.
yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game.
Ooh, and then we get to Saturday and we will be at Shark Park as the Sharks and the Cowboys go head-to-head for game 2 of round 1.
Yes, this is going to be a good one. So first cab off the rank, first home game for the Sharkies, and obviously the Cowboys having to travel down. Big signing for the Cowboys in the off-season, Jakaya Whitfield.
Yeah.
She is amazing. She's such a good athlete. She's a good footy player. And we had her obviously in and around Origin camp throughout the whole series, and she was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting a really big NRLW series out of her up there. And obviously Kira Dibb and Tallulah Tillett in the halves, really important. Emma Manzelman at 9 is going to be one that you have to keep your eye on because she will tear you up through the middle. She's so quick on her feet. She's got really good ruck recognition. And then for the Sharkies, obviously we spoke about Anessa earlier. I'm really keen to see how she goes after a year of NRLW under her belt. But that centre pairing, her and Tiana Penatani, that's a really powerful, really, really powerful centre pairing. And one to watch for the Sharkies, just keep your eye on Georgia Hannaway coming off the bench. So she also has a sevens background, but she was playing BMD in Queensland at the start of the year, and the Sharks have picked her up, and she's a good player. She can rip a football. That's why she's got a great pass on her. So I'm excited to see how she will go. Obviously, being a home game, I'm tipping the Sharkies to get the job done at home.
Alrighty. Then after that one, we'll be heading up to Brisbane, Suncorp Stadium, which is great, for the Broncos and the Eels.
Yes, this is going to be another really good clash. I think there's great clashes across the board.
Yeah.
For the Broncos, obviously a big loss. Gail Broughton still unavailable through injury, but that does then mean that Skylar Adams gets her shot playing 6. So she captained the Queensland 19s.
Yep.
She's a very good young player, and she'll be obviously with a very experienced half in Ali Brickenshaw. So I don't
to say the least.
I don't think she can go wrong there in that space to have her being mentored by Ali. So I think that's going to be really important. Probably one of the biggest to watch markups would be Melo Hufanga and Rosie Kelly. Those two going up against it. I spoke about Rosie Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how she goes. Very athletic player.
Yeah.
And Mela is a wrecking ball.
Isn't she just?
She's got such good footwork and she's so powerful, and they use her really, really well, very smartly. So that's going to be a real trick for the Eels to try and keep her contained, because close to the line she's very, very difficult to stop. You spoke about the Eels, and I'm just excited to see that Rachel Pearson and Elsie Albert both fit and ready to start the season for them. I think that's hugely important because it did hamstring their season at the start of last year, and they were behind the 8 ball from kickoff. Yeah. But they've made that a few changes. Again, Cassie Tohihiku moving into the halves alongside Rachel Pearson. We've only really seen Cass play centre and wing, so seeing her at 6 getting her hands on the ball a little bit more is great.
Yes.
And I think we're starting to see a little bit of a change in the women's game where girls who've been good ball runners and carriers out a little wider coming in. Like Corbin Baxter is a great example, coming in and playing 6. She usually played centre and wing and fullback. Coming in, she's a really good 6. She's a good running half. I think Jamie Frezard, same thing. She'd be a great running half. Cassie Tohihiku, very skillful, great running half, good defender. So, there's a lot of interesting changes happening. Yeah. And I think that's really, really cool to see. This one, however, I think I'm going to be tipping the Broncos at home to come away with a win. I mean, their bench is powerful.
Yes.
Very powerful. If you've got someone like Tasman Rapana coming off the bench, that's going to be really difficult to stop. And then, again, Chelsea Lenarduzzi as well. So you got 2 Origin players coming off a bench. That's going to be really difficult to try and slow their momentum.
Alrighty. After that match, the game after that is the following day. We get to Sunday then, and the Dragons will take on the Titans in Wynn Stadium down in Wollongong.
Yes, this is an exciting one. First home game for the Dragons. A lot of young players making their debut.
Yes.
Being handed their debut jerseys, which is very cool to see because we've spoken about how important it is to have that next generation coming through. Tegan Berry, again, she's going to be one you have to keep your eye on because if you're the Titans, if you give her half a sniff, she is very, very difficult to get a hold of.
Oh, yeah, she is.
She moves so beautifully. And then it's really good to see Keely Brown return.
Yeah.
It's really good. She's a really good centre for them. And then Bobby Law will partner her in the centres as well. And I love Bobby. I think she's fantastic. Shanae Lendl at lock. We've sort of seen her play a number of positions.
Yeah.
I think she's quite good at lock.
All right.
She's got really good footwork coming back against the grain. She's got a really hard step, and she's very difficult to sort of handle physically because she's very solid. Like, she's lean, but she's really powerful in her strength. So that's going to be good. I'm excited to see Casey Ray come off the bench. Superstar for the Junior Sky Blues.
Yeah.
In that 19s Origin, she was absolutely amazing. So obviously they're going to be using her potentially as a 9, just by the looks of the makeup of their bench, or she may come on in the halves and then Zali Hopkins may push to 9.
Yeah.
But it's great to see Zali Hopkins get that opportunity to play 6.
Yeah, for sure.
She has played a lot of halves.
Yeah.
So that's really good to see her partnering Ray McGregor in the halves there. For the Titans, you've spoken about how strong their squad looks, and it is a powerful squad. And probably more exciting as well from Karen Murphy's point of view is a lot of stability in that squad too.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a huge amount of movement for them. So a lot of those players have played together and they've been there for a little while, and you can just sort of see that connection really happening in the group. Obviously, Varney is amazing at the back. I think she leads tackle breaks like by a huge number. She's so powerful. And then Jamie Chapman, just pure speed and very difficult to contain because she moves so beautifully.
Doesn't she?
And then obviously their centre's very powerful as well. Oh, sorry, Chapo's playing in the centres, and along with Niall Williams-Guthrie, who I love. I think she's such a great player for them. And then Georgia Hale is just the constant.
Yeah.
She's the constant for that side. She is such a workhorse.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be tipping the Titans to come away with the win away from home for game 1.
And then our final game of the round.
Yes.
The Tigers and the Raiders, both in their second season in the NRLW. So I think I'm particularly excited to see those teams that it's their second year and they've sort of found themselves. So what do you reckon is going to come out of this one, which will be played at Campbelltown Sports Stadium?
Yeah, this is an exciting one. A few names that I'm excited to see for the first time in NRLW and a few that I'm excited to see come back from injury. So Tigers, I'm really excited to see Harmony Crichton, see how she goes.
Yep.
She's done some great things through junior footy, through Tasha Gale, and then obviously through the Harvey Norman competition. So to see her get an opportunity at NRLW level is awesome. And obviously she's got a big connection with footy. Steve Crichton is her brother.
Yes.
So a little bit of backyard footy always helps.
Yeah,
when you get to this level.
I think I saw her talking about him kicking the ball to her and the like. So yeah, it will be really interesting to see how she goes.
It'll be amazing. Great to see Lasana Lutu return to the halves. I love the way she plays footy for the Tigers, and they obviously have a lot of experience in their leadership. Bovete Welsh and Kezzy Abs as their captains. That's really important for them because it gives them stability. And then obviously Sala Tongatuki up front also gives a lot of that leg speed. Pumped to see the halves pairing for the Raiders, Quinlan and Temera, because they have played a lot of footy together now. Coming back together another season, I think that's really, really exciting to see. And then obviously returning from injury is exciting. Samaima Talfa.
Oh, yes.
Great to see her back.
Yeah.
She obviously had that shoulder surgery. And so now a full preseason under her belt, she'll be just chomping at the bit. She'll be ripping and tearing, ready to go.
Yes.
So this is, and then Gracie Kemp coming off the bench is a huge one for me.
Yep.
I love the way she plays footy.
Yeah.
She's big, she's powerful, she's skillful, she's got a great offload.
Yeah.
She's a good learner, she's willing. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really tight one. And this is probably the hardest game to tip for me. And I know that you're going to call me Splinters if I sit on the fence. So I am going to tip. I'm going to tip the Tigers.
Okay.
With the upset win because they're at home.
Right.
And also, I do want to very quickly just say I'm really excited to see Tash Penatani
Oh, yes.
make her debut. The name might sound familiar to everybody at home. It's because her sister Tiana Penatani has been playing at the top level for a very long time, and it's exciting to see Tash get a crack with the Tigers. I had the privilege of coaching her last year in the Harvey Norman for the Sharkies, and she is someone who's always willing to learn. So really pumped for her.
Alrighty. Well, I feel like that's the hardest game to call as well. So I just can't wait. I'm just so happy that we can have 5 games of women's rugby league this week. And it's the beginning of the season, so plenty more ahead. Well, Ru, thank you so much for being here once again. We've got a massive NRLW weekly, year for you, the back end of the year. Make sure you're hitting follow or subscribe wherever you're listening and tell people about it. Maybe you've got some mates who've never engaged with NRLW before and you want them to come along to games with you and the like. Tell them to listen to this first because you're going to learn some stuff, get pumped, know who to cheer for. And we are so excited to be with you.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Thank you for listening to the NRLW Weekly Podcast with Marlee Silva and Ruan Sims. Thanks to Lite and Easy, fueling Australian sport. We'll catch you next week.